Welcome to another exciting episode of bringing Jesus back into focus after it's been made very blurry about who he was and who the divine loving creator was, because they've put the Jewish religion and the Old Testament straight over the top of them. He said, never mix this new wine in with the old wine. It can't handle it. It'll burst the wineskins and you'll lose the new wine. You won't understand what I'm saying properly. And that's the confusion that all the Jewish Christian churches have caused for 1700 years by saying that Yahweh, the two-headed God of the Jews, a God of war and a God of love, is the same divine source of spiritual awakening that Jesus was at one with, and Buddha also. And of course it's a lie. I left the Jewish Christian Catholic Church when I was 16, 17 because of that lie. They were teaching that the Jewish religion God Yahweh is the same source that Jesus was at one with in his spiritual body. That's just ridiculous. I left. But I took Jesus with me. I didn't leave him. I love his words. I only looked at his words. I really wasn't interested much else in the entire Bible at all. Just his words were too beautiful to bother about anything else. And he said 17 times in the Gospels, he says, he who understands my words and follows them and listens to them, they will pass through death into life. It's his words, he keeps saying, that'll help you understand who you really are as a spiritual child of love. Now, I had to write 2 books because I was really annoyed in the last 5 years or so. I investigated what had gone wrong with the Jewish Christian churches. I never bothered about it. I just, thought, oh, well, if they want to teach that rubbish, they can if they want to. But now I realised it was really important that I go back because most children have left the Jewish Christian churches in Australia. They're dying out, and so Jesus' beautiful teachings are dying out. And part of the problem is of this lie that the Jewish religion, the God Yahweh, is the same source as the loving spiritual one. It's just ridiculous. A 12-year-old could tell you that's not logical. So I had to write the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged, which is a new translation of the Gospels written in a more clear understanding of the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John and Thomas. Some of Thomas is in it as well. Instead of our Father, I use the term spiritual loving creator. It's a much more universal. I've cut out some of the Jewish overlays because you must remember the Christian religion is being poisoned by the Jewish religion. It's just the way it is. That's just the fact. He said, don't mix the new wine in the old, and don't put the old wine in the new. Otherwise you'll taint it. So that's what's happened, of course. I explain it all in the book of the teachings of Jesus Unplugged, which has just been about to be published in the first week, of 2026. So that I've just finished that on Christmas Day and said, here you go. This is my present for you to try to help stop them slandering you and the loving spiritual creator. They shouldn't do that. So we're going to read from that, and you can contact me at jcinfocus@gmail.com if you want to comment on my beliefs, or they're only Jesus' words, but they're also my beliefs too. That's the book I'll be reading from chapter 8, Teachings of Jesus Unplugged, chapter 8 on this episode. This is the cover of the book, which explains the general dialogue of Jesus' purpose. The spiritual teachings of Jesus are a universal calling to all human children on earth to awaken into our spiritual body and true identity of love and non-violence before our dualistic body and mind of the flesh dies and returns to the earth. Only our spiritual body and soul live on. We must prevent the dualistic mind of our earthly body of flesh from controlling us and become at one with our spiritual mind, filled only with the loving life force of our loving spiritual creator. Then our 2 bodies, one made of the earth and one formed of spirit, can be in harmony and at one in purpose to bring the spiritual love and peace of heaven to earth for all children. Only true spiritual children of light and love can enter the heavenly spiritual world. All those children divided within themselves between love and hatred cannot enter. The words of Jesus can awaken and transform us. This is a little daily prayer I've made up because I'm extremely ill and I nearly die every single day from a fungal infection that's quite neurotoxic to the brain. It's a bit like meningitis now. And yet this massive commitment I have to remove some of the slander from Jesus and the loving spiritual creator, because I've only ever seen him as love and non-violence my whole life since I was a little child. I was always just drawn to his words. They're so beautiful. I've always loved his words, and lucky for me because 17 times he says, it's my words that save you, not his blood on the cross. That's a Jewish thing. So the daily prayer, I've had to make this prayer up so I can get ready to die if I have to do that today or tomorrow or any moment now. I'm still trying to heal myself through natural remedies because the medical profession in Melbourne have abandoned me to die because I have too much evidence that they're incompetent and negligent and corrupt. I pray for them first every morning that they're filled with the love of our loving Creator because they sure didn't love me. Now I use the female aspect she in this prayer, but of course use the word he, the pronoun he, which is the traditional Jewish patriarchal society word for God, male God. And Jesus, of course, used the term father, so of course he's fine. I mean, it doesn't matter he or she. I just want to point out Jesus never called God Yahweh. He couldn't do that because the Jews worship two different Yahwehs. One is a war god, a violent, brutal war god, just like the Roman god Mars, the Greek god Ares, and they had another god of love. But they called that god Yahweh too, you see. Very cunning. Whereas the Romans said our God of peace and love is Pax. And the Greeks said our God of peace and love is Irene. And they had different temples because they're totally different forces. They're opposing forces, black and white. So I use the word she anyway, to cut a long story short, because the interesting thing about the word she is that it contains both the male and female name in one, S-H-E, whereas he only is male. So I call her she. Women on earth give birth to us, all of us come through a woman's body, so into this world. And so I figure, well, why not call our spiritual creator she? It gives a much better view of her, particularly with the Jewish Christian, the poisoning of Jesus and the loving one through the Jewish religion, Yahweh, the war god Yahweh. That's poisoned who Jesus and the loving one is. So it's important we remove that and cut the Jewish connection off from the Christian religion. This is the prayer. If you say this and think about you're in your spiritual body instead of just your body of flesh, it'll help you really feel more at one with who you really are. It's worked for me. As I rest upon this earth, the Holy One, she will give birth to who I really am, awakening me from clay and sand, a spiritual child of the divine, with only her love that fills my mind. To every creature I will be kind in every single land, for this is truly who I am, a spiritual child of the loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world, born out of the earth to bring her love to children in need and help guide them home to heaven as she has guided me, through the spiritual way and teachings that Jesus gave us to be just as he, a spiritual child of love on earth. That prayer helps me center into who I really am. My physical body's in a lot of pain, I nearly die every day, all that sort of thing. But I know that's finite. But am I spiritually clean? Am I ready to be in the presence of a pure spiritual being of love, whose entire consciousness is love and is purity itself? Pure gold, untarnishable. Am I clean enough to be in her presence? That's all that matters now for me, and it should be all that matters for everyone in the whole world. The Spirit Earth logo that I have shows you the cross and the dove, and that represents all our bodies, but obviously Jesus in particular. His body of flesh died on the cross. He flew away in his spiritual body. That's what that means. So it's a beautiful logo. I like it. This is chapter 8 of the Teachings of Jesus Unplugged. I'll get straight into it. Jesus was a pacifist, argue. All the early Christians were, by the way. Just a bit of a hint about what's to come. It is an undeniable historical fact that Jesus was a pacifist and taught his followers that the only way to pass safely through this temporary material world of duality, dangers, dark evils, and death of the flesh was by becoming at one with perfect spiritual love. And this only exists naturally in our spiritual bodies, as our bodies of flesh are prone to be dualistic in nature because they are formed from the earthly elements, not from our loving spiritual creator's life force in heaven, like our spiritual bodies are. She's only perfect love, so if your body's formed from her, it's perfect love. But we've got another body that interferes if we're not careful. And it can happen anyway if you're poisoned or something. Any Judeo-Christian who slanders Jesus and our loving spiritual creator, who gives us a spiritual life filled only with her loving life force, by saying his followers can go to war and kill, is a Jew, not a Christian. This is the problem with the Judeo-Christians. You see, they're Jewish Christians. They're Jewish and they worship the Jewish God Yahweh, not the Christian God that Jesus was at one with. So they are worshipping the two-headed God Yahweh of the Jews, not our loving spiritual creator. That is the massive distortion that most Judeo-Christians hold on to, which goes against Jesus and seriously damages his spiritual way of love we must follow and our loving spiritual creator. And without becoming at one with this perfect spiritual love while here on earth by bringing our spiritual body, soul and mind alive through this perfect heavenly loving life force, we will not enter into the heavenly spiritual world. Jesus himself clearly said this in the Sermon on the Mount. The reason I placed the preceding chapters dealing with the powerful spiritual truth that Jesus taught, that we all have two very different bodies in one, is because without understanding and believing in that fundamental spiritual truth, we may lack the spiritual strength and courage to become a pacifist like Jesus. But once we awaken fully to our spiritual body's existence, being with us right now, and are living out of it as our primary identity on earth, and believe totally in life after death, then we can even face our body of flesh being killed by a demented child who has become a beast of the flesh, but not retaliate against them in a similar way. Christians do not partake in wars, unless you want to be a doctor or a nurse. Our responsibility as awakened spiritual children of heaven on earth is to behave just as we will in heaven and shine the peace and love of heaven to those who are lost in the dark delusion of a false, violent shadow identity devoid of spiritual life and love. Jesus did exactly this by allowing the Jews to murder his body of flesh and not fight back physically, because he knew he had another body with him that was alive and well, that was spiritual, which he was already at one with and living out of, that they could not kill. Jesus was a pacifist. Are you? Peacemakers are the spiritual children of our loving Creator. Matthew 5:9. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the spiritual children of our loving spiritual Creator in the heavenly spiritual world." This short, simple spiritual teaching of Jesus describes the very nature of true children of our loving spiritual Creator. They only make peace, for they are alive in spirit and are filled with her spiritual loving life force, and in the face of violence and war, they are the spiritual loving counterforce from heaven to bring peace on earth. For only love can overcome all hatred and violence and bring peace to this world of suffering. Jesus was a pacifist. Are you? Love your enemies, Matthew 5:43, and Luke as well. Jesus said, "You have heard it said of old, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, you must resist retaliating evil with evil for revenge. But instead, whoever strikes you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. You have been taught of old, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless them who curse you. Do good to those who hate you, pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, so that you may become the spiritual children of your loving spiritual Creator in the heavenly spiritual world. For she makes her sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust, and she is kind to the ungrateful and to the evil ones. If you love only those who love you, what spiritual reward do you have? Do not even sinners and corrupt children love those who love them? And if you joyously greet your fellow brethren only, what do you do more than others with only limited spiritual life in themselves? And if you will only do good to those who do good to you, your own spiritual life will remain incomplete and unfulfilled. But I say, love your enemies, do good and lend, hoping for nothing in return, and your spiritual growth will increase greatly. Therefore, if you really want to become living spiritual children of your loving spiritual Creator and enter into her heavenly spiritual world, your love right now must be as perfect as her love. These spiritual teachings on love and non-violence, which only a true pacifist follower of Jesus could do, are the most powerful he ever gave us to follow. All other teachings and spiritual practices he gave come forth from this one. For God is love. But to reach this level of realization and become a pacifist, we need to understand that we are actually a spiritual child with an eternal spiritual body with us right now that cannot die, empowered only by the loving spiritual life force of our loving Creator. We need to begin understanding this by first learning his fundamental spiritual teachings like love, compassion, forgiveness, non-violence, equanimity, generosity, honesty, spiritual truth, and reaching out to help those who have fallen down. Then each fundamental building block slowly builds up your spiritual strength and brings your spiritual body and soul to life until they begin to form your spiritual home to live out of on earth, based on the foundation of his teachings that Jesus called the rock. My words are like a man who built his home on a rock, and nothing could overcome it, including demented children, lost in darkness, who may become our enemies and want to hurt us. But we only feel sorry for them and love them in the best way we can, as Jesus told us to do, to bring them out of their darkness and guide them into the light of heaven. Anyone can climb to this great spiritual height and reach the summit of perfect spiritual love and non-violence by transforming into a loving pacifist, and then see the view of heaven opening up and come into sight before them. For all children in the heavenly spiritual world of love are pacifists, but only pacifists on earth, filled with perfect love, can reach the top of the mountain, and being spiritually awakened by Jesus to understand that you have two different bodies in one is a powerful blessing to help you scale that summit. Once you reach the summit, there is only heaven above you and all earth below. At this point, you realize the fullness of the truth that Jesus did when he said in John 8:23, "You are from below, I am now from above. You are of this earth world, I am not of this earth world." And then your body of flesh can die and stay with the earth it was made of, because you will leave in your perfect spiritual body, brought alive through his words of love and non-violence that you took inside yourself and were nourished by. This is the spiritual bread that came down from heaven that Jesus offers to all of us to partake in, to have true spiritual life. Jesus was a pacifist. Are you? Live by the sword, die by the sword, Matthew 26:50 and Luke. Then they came and laid hold of Jesus and seized him. And one of those with Jesus reached and drew out his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. Jesus then rebuked him, saying, "Put your sword back into its place, for all who take up the sword shall perish by the sword." And he touched the servant's ear and healed him. Jesus is clearly warning us that anyone who takes up the sword or gun or tank or drone or missile or any other weapon of death to kill another child of our loving spiritual Creator by becoming a beast of the flesh devoid of spiritual life and love will face serious consequences. He cannot be more direct about this with the words he spoke right here. Jesus wants us all to be pacifists for one extremely important reason. He wants us to be ready to enter the heavenly spiritual world after our body of flesh dies, so we can come out of all the suffering and death in the earth world into eternal joy and love in the heavenly spiritual world with our spiritual body and soul intact. For a follower of Jesus to ignore this and kill other children of our loving Creator is extremely dangerous for their own spiritual body and soul. Jesus gave us a beautiful example when arrested of how we deal with a violent situation as a true pacifist follower of his should. Firstly, he immediately intervenes with the follower who drew the sword and rebuked him to stop any further bloodshed. He then demonstrated his perfect spiritual love by healing the enemies in Judea, the one who came to get him to kill him. He healed his ear. Sadly, I've heard many Judeo-Christians pervert these words of Jesus and teach the opposite to children, that we can kill our enemies. They quote examples of the distorted two-headed war god of the Jews who helped them slaughter their enemies, saying it is the same loving creator of Jesus. So we can do it too. Filthy slander. They are Jewish when they say this and are certainly not Christians or followers of Jesus when they teach this to children and poison their hearts and minds. The one loving spiritual creator of Jesus is definitely not the same dualistic, two-headed, distorted God, Yahweh of the Jews. Jesus was a pacifist. So is the loving creator. Are you? They can only kill your flesh, not your soul. Matthew 10:28. Jesus taught, "Do not be afraid of those who can kill your body of flesh, but cannot kill your spiritual body and soul, but rather fear sin that can both destroy your body of flesh and damage and injure your spirit and soul." Jesus is saying at times in this earthly world we may face two different enemies, but only one of them is fatal, and that is the one we must always guard ourselves against no matter what. The external enemy, who has become a beast of the flesh, joining an army of children who are also beasts of the flesh, to kill and steal from other children, is not the one that is the most dangerous to your well-being. For we have two very different bodies to keep healthy, so they both have life, and they can both be damaged but by two very different things. And one has a temporary short-term life that comes to an end, while the other is eternal. Which do you think is the most valuable to protect? Our body of flesh will die one day anyway and return to the earth from which it was formed. It may just grow old and stop working, be killed in a sudden accident when young, or killed by a disease at any time during our journey. Being killed by a demented child whose soul is lost in darkness and evil is just another way our body of flesh stops working. And although we will suffer a painful death of our body of flesh that the child lost in dark evil has caused us to experience with a bullet or evil weapon, our spiritual body will not be impacted in any way whatsoever. A bullet is only made of earth and can only affect earthly things. Our spiritual body is made from a totally different substance that is vastly superior in every way. It is formed from the actual living, loving spiritual life force of our loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world. It is love, light, and life itself, and cannot die. Only the internal enemies of wrongdoings and evil that can arise from within our own minds by becoming a false, dark, shadow figure can damage our spiritual life and spiritual body and soul by covering our true spiritual identity of love and light with filth. Jesus said this is the one true life to protect above all else. For if you lose this one true spiritual life, you will lose everything. As Jesus said in Matthew 16:26, "What does it profit a man if he should gain the whole material world, but lose his own soul?" Only a pacifist follower of Jesus who believes in their eternal spiritual life could accept such an horrific end to their physical life on earth by being killed by a child who is demented by their own evil without killing the other child first to protect their body of flesh. For that would damage their own spiritual body and soul mind of love and their entry into the heavenly spiritual world of love. And that poor child of our loving Creator is already lost in the darkness of their own evil, and they are dead to their spirit and devoid of true spiritual life anyway, and cannot enter the heavenly spiritual world like that. They have to repent, of course. And if you do take their life in self-defense to protect our body of temporary flesh, we have robbed them of the chance to repent and turn away from evil and enter heaven. A very serious thing to do to a lost child of our loving Creator, who still loves them and only wants them to come out of evil and be saved to heaven, not killed. As Jesus said, "I did not come to condemn, but to save the sinners who are lost in the darkness surrounding their soul." Jesus was a pacifist, are you? I know it's difficult for us when this comes and confronts us, but you must believe in life after death. You must believe in being loved, and we have to be an example to the children lost in their own evil imaginations and dark shadow figures, that they're not their true selves, and feel sorry for them. It is the Spirit who gives life, the flesh profits nothing. John 4:24 and John 6. Jesus said, "Our loving spiritual creator is spirit, and those who love her must come to her in spirit and in truth. It is the spirit who gives life, the flesh profits nothing." This is another very powerful teaching of Jesus to help us all become strong spiritual children and pacifists in a dangerous material dualistic world. Jesus very clearly states again that it is the spiritual body and soul created for you by our loving creator in the heavenly spiritual world that is the only real life you have. Real life is ongoing as it is life itself, and our spiritual bodies and souls are only empowered by one thing, our loving creator's living spiritual eternal loving life force. Therefore we have eternal life if we are at one with our spiritual body and soul before we die. As Jesus said, it is the Spirit who gives life. Our body of flesh is obviously not the true eternal life that Jesus often spoke of because it dies. It only has a brief lifespan based on earthly elements that is cyclic, but it gives us time to find the treasure within us of our true spiritual body and soul mind of love, to awaken and arise up into eternal life in a heavenly spiritual world before our body of flesh dies. And Jesus says that if we want to come to where our Creator is in a heavenly spiritual world of love, we must come to her in our spiritual body and in truth, not our body of flesh, which once dead has no life in it anyway. And he very bluntly states that at the end of our life on earth, where the body of flesh dies, it is absolutely of no use to you whatsoever anymore, and is just food for the vultures. They're his words. I agree. To become a true pacifist follower of Jesus in this dangerous material world, we must understand the power in this profound spiritual truth he is often teaching. It can fill us with a spiritual strength that other worldly children do not have. While they may take up the gun to kill and therefore worship death, we take up the spirit to heal and so worship true life. And as Jesus warned everyone, we will all reap as we have sown. Who has the greatest courage in this material world? A demented child who has become a beast of the flesh, full of hatred, greed and murder, whose only strength is to pull the trigger of an evil satanic gun? Or the loving spiritual child of heaven, who is so strong in spirit that they love him even as he is pulling the trigger or nails them to a cross? Which one of those two figures is the greater? Which is the lesser? It's pretty obvious if you believe in a spiritual world and life after death. Jesus was a pacifist. Are you? Angry words can hurt other children. Matthew 5:21 and 12:36. Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said to those of olden times, 'You shall not kill, and whoever kills shall be in danger of damnation.' But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother or sister for no reason shall also be in danger of judgment coming down upon them. And whoever calls his brother or sister worthless or a fool, harming their spirits, will be in even greater danger and fall into terrible suffering themselves as a consequence." Jesus said, "I tell you that every careless word that people speak, they'll have to give an accounting of at their judgment day." Their judgment day, that's when you die. When we die, when I die. "For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. Reap as you sow," he said. Jesus says that while killing another child leads obviously to the destruction of your own spiritual life, anger can be just as dangerous for your spirit and soul as it can hurt other children's spirit and damage your own spirit of love that is your true life force. And of course, any anger is like a smouldering coal that once the winds of hatred are blown upon it, can set fire to a peaceful family home or a whole country and plunge it into war. This is the level of spiritual understanding we must reach to be true followers of Jesus, to avoid using words as a weapon to deliberately hurt others, instead of an instrument of truth that helps bring those lost in darkness back to spiritual love and life and supports reconciliation and peace. Pacifists are full of spiritual love, peace and non-violence, but they have a strong spiritual sense of what is right and wrong when engaging with other children and must speak the truth, calling out any evil they encounter. Pacifists, along with being non-violent, are usually the ones who are sympathetic and use supportive words of healing, truth and understanding to help resolve any difficult situation. This is the spirit of their love and our loving Creator working through them for others. In these modern times of social media unfortunately dominating young people's lives, there are deeply disturbing events where some teenagers have taken their own lives after being attacked online by other thoughtless, evil-minded children who drive them to kill themselves by just hurting them using evil words. Words can hurt our own spirits if we are not in control, and even kill other children when used as weapons of evil. Words are powerful. Powerfully good, powerfully bad. Depends which side you're on. While Jesus was very forthright and critical at times when speaking the truth with corrupt Jewish leaders and people, the words that he used when dealing with those who were sick, outcasts, or fallen down into sin were nothing but comforting, supportive, loving, and forgiving to lift them up into peace, hope, and spiritual life. Pacifists are loving but truthful to reveal corruption, yet set children free from sin and lift those who have fallen down. Lift up those who have fallen down. I'll read that again. Pacifists are loving but truthful to reveal corruption, set children free from sin, and lift up those who have fallen down. That sounds better. Jesus was a pacifist, are you? The lost sheep parable, Matthew 18:12 and Luke 15. Then the tax collectors and sinners drew near to Jesus to hear him teach, and the Pharisees and the scribes complained, saying, "This man receives and associates with sinners, and he eats with them." Jesus overheard them and spoke this parable to them. "What man among you, having 100 sheep, and if he loses one of them, does not leave the 99 in the countryside, and goes to find the one which is lost? And when he finds the lost sheep, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing at having found it. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbours, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost.' I say to you, there will be more rejoicing in the heavenly spiritual world over one sinner who repents than over 99 virtuous children who need no repentance. For it is the will and intent of my loving spiritual Creator in heaven that not even one of those lost and least in spirit should ever be destroyed." The loving spiritual Creator doesn't hurt anyone. Please get it into your heads and don't be brainwashed by the Jewish Christians who tell you she's Yahweh, the murdering, violent war god of the Jews, and the God of love, two different Yahwehs. Here Jesus is saying it's her intention that no one is destroyed. It doesn't mean you're not going to suffer, reaping what you sow. Hell exists, but she doesn't destroy you. This beautiful image of a loving, non-judgmental shepherd going to great lengths to bring the wayward lost sheep back home to safety is a wonderful lesson to us all as followers of Jesus. He doesn't beat it or punish it for getting itself lost, but only rejoices to have it back home safely. The lost sheep is any child on earth who has turned away from our loving spiritual Creator and her light and love to become a dark beast of the flesh to whatever degree. From being just selfish and uncaring to becoming a satanic warmonger, slaughtering children through the evil of war. Yet Jesus clearly states that not one of these gone into darkness will be destroyed, due to the unending love shining on them from heaven of our loving spiritual Creator, who gave them spiritual life to live out of, even though they may have rejected it for now. Our loving spiritual Creator is a being of pure love and is the ultimate pacifist. And we must all become her spiritual children now to enter her heavenly spiritual world of love and peace after our body of flesh dies and returns to the earth. We shine the light to bring other children out of the darkness they have gone into. We never become like the darkness that they have become at one with. Otherwise, we would both be lost. However, such lost children who do not repent and change their ways while alive on earth will have to undergo burning realizations in accordance with the intensity of the wrongdoings they have committed. This is the neutral, divine spiritual law of reaping what we sow, acting like a mirror, reflecting what they have done to others, back to themselves, to experience it and be spiritually cleansed after their body of flesh dies. How long this takes and what the intensity may be will depend on the extent of the suffering caused by each individual child. Another reason to never have to kill a child of evil and remain a pacifist in the face of evil, because they will all suffer after death anyway. For the worst offenders, especially every child involved in killing other children in any war for any reason, will all suffer beyond any horror they could imagine. Neither our loving Creator nor Jesus will cast them into a hellish experience or cause their suffering, for they create it themselves by killing other children of our loving Creator. But Jesus and our loving spiritual Creator will still be there for them when their spiritual cleansing is finished, to embrace them once again with their love. As Jesus himself said while dying on the cross, "Loving Creator, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Jesus was a pacifist, and so is our loving Creator. And we mustn't think that I can kill all the people I want, then I'll have some cleansing, everything will be fine, and then they'll love me. It's not like that. The suffering these warmongers will undergo is beyond anything anyone on earth can imagine, because they're in the presence of the divine love, and they understand everything they've done, and they'll relive every single death they caused. They will literally die. In Putin's case, or Netanyahu, or Hitler, or whoever it is, thousands of times. Thousands, tens of thousands. They'll die that many times. And they really will experience it. They don't know anything about this, because they're ignorant. False identities, devoid of spiritual life from heaven. Spiritual children save lives, we do not destroy them. Once again, Jesus' message. Luke 9:52, when Jesus was travelling to Jerusalem, he wanted to stay the night in a Samaritan village, but the people refused him accommodation, being upset that he would not stay and teach them. When his disciples James and John heard that they were insulting Jesus in this way, they said to Jesus, "Master, do you want us to order fire to come down from heaven and consume them, just as Elijah did?" Jesus immediately turned around and strongly rebuked them, saying, "You do not know what sort of spirit you are of or from, for a spiritual child of our loving Creator only saves lives and never destroys them." Jesus states very plainly that spiritual children of our loving spiritual Creator in the heavenly spiritual world never destroy other children's lives, because we are empowered only by love for them. Only a true pacifist and follower of the spiritual way of Jesus can be insulted, persecuted, or attacked by another child and remain peaceful towards that child. How else can we show them the way to heaven, love and peace, if we do not live out of these spiritual powers ourselves? Jesus was a pacifist to you. Now, I'm not saying here that when we're attacked by someone we don't defend ourselves, but we don't become like them. We don't try to hurt them and kill them like they're trying to do to us. We can't do that. Defend yourself, move away from them, sure. Throw a net over them, something like that, or taser them from a distance perhaps, to put them out of their evil ways, but not kill them. These sorts of things, we can try to neutralize their evil, but we can't become like them. They've got a club, we don't pick up a club and start bashing them as well. We can't do that. We can defend ourselves as best we can, but Christians have two bodies. Everyone does, but Christians know it. If you follow Jesus, you know it, and you look for it, and you try to become at one with it as much as you can while you're alive, so it's strong and ready to leave, no matter how, no matter what the cause is. You're ready. You've got another body. It's full of love. You've lived a life of love. You've been a pacifist, even in the face of evil. That is powerful. That is the most powerful human being on earth who can do that. It's easy to be a rock ape like Vladimir Putin, a complete gorilla. Just a rock ape, sledgehammer, smash, bang, crash, murder, kill. What a pathetic little boy he is. What a sad boy. He's going to the hellish experience for all the murders he's committed. He doesn't believe in that anyway, so we can't help him easily. We just try to warn him, that's all. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. John 10:11, Jesus said, I am the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Jesus voluntarily allowed his body of flesh to be killed by the Jews without fighting back or killing them to defend his own body of flesh. He did not form a righteous army to kill them and save his physical life. In the face of being unjustly crucified to death by evil-minded children, he was nothing but peaceful and forgiving towards them, because he was a spiritual child of light and true life, empowered only by love. While they were still children of darkness in earthly dualistic bodies of flesh, empowered only by hatred, envy, and death. Jesus was a pacifist. Are you? Love is the greatest spiritual practice of all. Matthew 22:37. Jesus said, the greatest spiritual commandment is to love a loving spiritual creator with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. And the second greatest is like it. You shall love your neighbour as yourself. All spiritual practices come forth from these two. A pacifist like Jesus is empowered only by a spiritual loving life force from the heavenly spiritual world and our loving spiritual creator. A pacifist sees all other children as being potentially spiritual children of our loving spiritual creator, just like themselves, and does not dominate, take advantage, or abuse anyone, or be violent towards them, but treats them all as close friends. Some may be lost in darkness and evil, so we help them find the way out by giving them the truth about spiritual life and the distorted identity they have become. Some may be in great physical need or ill, so we give them the appropriate comfort they need. Without true spiritual awakening and love inside you, it is not possible to follow in the way of Jesus and be a pacifist like he was and become a living spiritual child of heaven on earth. Jesus was a pacifist. Are you? God is love. Love is life. Love your enemies. Turn the other cheek. Pray for those who hurt you. Forgive and you'll be forgiven. Put your sword back into its place. Die to the flesh and live in your spirit. So these are the words of Jesus when he sort of was trying to teach about being a pacifist. He had trouble, of course, because once you're a pacifist, you're vulnerable, physically speaking. But what's happened is you've protected your spirit. Your spirit's eternal. Everyone's body dies. It rots, stinks, goes back to the earth. It's just made of earth elements, copper, calcium, water, gases, all sorts of different things. It's a biological organism. It has life. It has a certain life force, but it's all earthly life force. It's all biological. It's not spiritual. So the spiritual body leaves when the body dies, whether it's young or middle-aged or old. It doesn't matter. You have to leave it. At some point on your journey, there's a day ahead somewhere, but that'll be the day that you leave your body, physical body. Jesus is constantly saying, heaven is a place of no suffering, no evil. It's only a place of love and nothing else. And the creative life force, the consciousness of this spiritual world is love, pure love. If you want to enter into a world created by a pure loving being, which is a pure loving world, what do you have to be? You have to have the ticket that says, like that word above my head at the back there in the back wall, you have to have that ticket that says L-O-V-E, love. If you've got that ticket, and that ticket means if that was your life on earth, it was a life of love. You didn't kill anyone, you didn't hurt anyone, you didn't join the armies or stinking filthy navies or air forces or any of these bastard satanic organisations in the world, because that's all they are. We all need police forces, local police forces, for sure, criminals, gangsters, etc. But we do not need world armies with nuclear weapons and all this sort of satanic filth and evil. We do not need that. All that money should be turned to helping all the poor countries in the world build housing, food, starvation, help all these things with all that armaments industry. But they're too satanic, you see. Satan's got too much of a grip on them. They don't believe in life after death, all these people. Not really. They don't believe in heaven, that's for sure, because you can't get in with a gun. The bouncers on the door, the angels who are the bouncers on the door of heaven, you rock up with your gun and your drone and your tank, and you hand grenades and, oh, you're a big man, look at me, I'm Vladimir Putin, look how many people I've killed. He rocks up at the gates of heaven. Sorry, you're not allowed in. Too late to say sorry. Sorry, Vlad. Sorry, Netanyahu. Sorry, Hamas. Sorry, Adolf. Sorry, everyone who's a mass murderer and killer of other children. Sorry, can't get in with that gun, not allowed. So the trouble is, the strongest children on the earth planet are the spiritual children who are pacifists. They're the strongest, the most powerful, because they're spiritual. But it means our bodies of flesh are vulnerable. But they're going to die anyway. We have to be an example of peace and love. Otherwise, how are these mass demented satanic murderers, like the Israeli army, the Russian army, Hamas, Ukraine, all killing, murdering other children, dressed up in funny-looking uniforms, with these satanic weapons made in the satanic factories, one of Satan's biggest businesses, probably the biggest on the planet. All employed by Satan, working for Satan. They're all in the same army. They're all in Satan's army. Never mind. One day they might wake up after a lot of cleansing in the river of reaping what you sow. They'll never want to go in there again. So all I can do is share these truths and teachings of Jesus, because I was really angry about the way they're slandering Jesus and our loving Creator. Once I started to investigate what had gone wrong with Jesus' teachings, I never bothered because I knew he was love and non-violence. I was fine with that. It wasn't until I realised, they're still teaching this Jewish rubbish, that he's Yahweh, the war God, and the God of Yahweh love. That's not correct. So I don't want children missing out on heaven. You have to follow the words of Jesus only in the entire Bible. And even then, you've got to be careful, because there have been Jewish overlays put into the Gospels, which, as I say, I had to write the Gospels to retranslate them. I'll give you one example from the Gospels Unplugged. Where is it? I'll give you one example from the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged, which I had to correct, sorry, not create. There's a saying in all the Bibles of the whole world, and it's slightly different translations, but generally, there's a point where Jesus is criticizing the Jews for rejecting his way of pacifism and love and non-violence, and coming out of the dualistic religion of two gods, the war God and the God of love, into the God of love, whose love shines like the sun on the good and the evil, right? That's pure love. That's not judgmental love, that's pure love. Jesus described God as pure love. So he says to them, I'm the cornerstone, and you've rejected me. Anyone who falls upon this cornerstone will be broken to pieces, and anyone whom this cornerstone falls upon will be crushed. Now that's in all the Bibles of the world, from the Greek translations. I've asked Christians that, Jewish Christians, what they think that means, and the general consensus is, Jesus and God are going to destroy all the evil people, going to crush them. That's the general consensus. The Greek translation in my book's quite different, because the words in the Greek language can mean a couple of different things. The word fall, for example, can mean to alight upon. So instead of a big cornerstone falling on you, crushing you to death, which is the image that these false words give, you can use the word alight. So if I alight upon you, the Greek word for crush can also mean winnow. They winnowed the chaff from the good seed to get the good seed out and remove the rubbish. My translation is, whomever comes against me, the cornerstone, I will break their false identity to pieces and reveal their true identity as a spiritual child of love. And anyone whom I alight upon or come into your life, I will winnow you of your sins and reveal to you your true identity. Now that is a completely different, true and correct translation of the Greek meaning of what Jesus was saying, and yet all the Bibles in the world inflect it towards crush, smash to pieces. And it's taken to mean that he's a son of the Jewish war god. It's deliberately done. So anyway, that's that's that book there. So that's just an example of how I've had to correct the slander against him and clarify it. One Catholic priest asked about this. I said, that crush business, that doesn't mean he's going to destroy anyone, does it? Crush them to death. He goes, oh, no. I said, it means winnow, doesn't it? It should mean winnow. And he goes, oh, that's right, yep. I said, well, why don't they put that in? Why doesn't the Catholic Church put it in? Oh, well, it's traditional. Traditional rubbish. You know, make it clearer for children to understand what he's saying. If I alight upon you, I'll help winnow you of your sins. I'll help you clean the inside of your cup out and reveal your true identity. That's what he's saying. Why don't they put that in? Oh, we're not allowed to change anything. It's been lying like that for 1700 years. It's been inflecting that way for so long. We're used to that lie or that bad inflection. So that's disgraceful. That really is. So anyway, slander everywhere. So just follow his words in the Bible. If you can get through the slight, you know, that's a typical case study there of how it's been used to slander him or inflect him into being a violent, crushing destroyer of children. It means the exact opposite. He's going to break apart your false lying identity and reveal your true spiritual loving identity. If you let him come in to your life, he'll do that. That's what it means. And that's why I've written it in the Gospels Unplugged. I'll leave you with that now. Of course, that was a general dialogue, chapter 8. And it's extremely important we understand, unfortunately for all of us who are true followers of Jesus, there's not a lot of us left in the world, we're pacifists. I'll never join an army, navy or air force ever. No true Christian ever will. No true follower of Jesus ever will. The Amish don't. Quakers don't. So I'm sort of with that small minority of Christians that are still hanging around. I hope all the Jewish Christians cut away the Jewish Bible altogether, stick it on a shelf with the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, Buddhist teachings. Look at it from every now and then if you wanted to look at the love that's in that book, but there's a lot of evil murdering in that book from the war god Yahweh. Just stay with Jesus' words of love and you'll be right. And you'll get to heaven, providing we can practice them. I find it challenging. I'm sure everyone does. But nonetheless, he said, don't worry. Keep trying. Just remember, you've got to clean the inside of the cup out. That's the main problem. Stay clean because you're going to come into the presence of this divine, pure being of love. You don't want to be covered in filth or dog droppings like, you know, Putin and the armies over there and Netanyahu. They're covered in dog droppings. They smeared it all over them. Dog droppings, I'm using a polite word. They think they smell so nice, like perfume. In heaven, that smells like dog droppings. Murdering other children. That stinks. They don't even know it. They think they smell so good. That's Satan's smell on them. If you worship Satan, I guess that's the smell you like, isn't it? You stink. Warmongers. Please come out of it and be spiritual children. Okay, bye for now. Next chapter, next episode.